Document D, the Gaju. Content notes. Historian Karen Armstrong is the author of over 20 books and is a leading authority on comparative religion. Much of her scholarship has focused on what Islam, Judaism, and Christianity have in common and how these faiths have shaped world history and current events. Born in 1944, the former nun summarized her personal view on faith in 2009, saying, quote, "I say that religion isn't about believing things. It's ethical alchemy. It's about behaving in a way that changes you, that gives you intimations of holiness and sacredness." End quote. One of Muhammad's primary concerns was the Ummah, or Muslim community, would live up to the ideals of egalitarianism and social justice. Almsgiving is central to Islam, as is the care of widows and orphans. Muhammad himself was an orphan, so he empathized with their plight. Later, when Muslim armies went on raids against non-Muslims, 1/5 of the plunder was turned over to the state so it could be used to support the Ummah. Similarly, Muslim armies were not allowed to settle on the lands they won. Instead, the state collected various taxes from conquered peoples and used that revenue to support the Ummah. One result of these policies was that Muslim armies became a professional fighting force that never settled down, and military expansion continued because the empire needed revenue to pay out salaries to the Ummah. Armstrong emphasizes that the Gaju was not about spreading Islam, at least in its early years. The purpose was to plunder, that is, to take treasure from non-Muslim groups and use it to fortify the growing community of Islamic believers. However, restraints were put on this practice. People of the book, that is, Jews and Christians, were not to be plundered because they, like the Muslims, believed in one God and provided a line of prophets among whom Muhammad was simply the last. Muhammad's goodwill towards Jews and Christians lessened later in his life when he realized that many in these two faith groups would not accept Muhammad as their spiritual leader. Document D. Source: Karen Armstrong. Islam, A Short History, from Random House, 2000. For centuries, Arabs had added to their inadequate resources by means of the Gaju, raids against other tribes. But Islam had put a stop to this because the Ummah, or Muslim community, was not permitted to attack one another. What would replace the Gaju, which had enabled Muslims to scratch out a meager livelihood? The obvious answer was a series of Gaju raids against the non-Muslim communities in the neighboring countries. The unity of the Ummah would be preserved by an outwardly directed offensive or attack. There was nothing religious about these campaigns. The objective was plunder, and a common activity that would preserve the unity of the Ummah. For centuries, the Arabs had tried to raid the richer settled lands beyond the Arabian Peninsula. The difference was that this time they encountered a power vacuum. Persia and Byzantium had both been engaged for decades in a long series of wars with one another. Both were exhausted.